The golden halls of the Valyrian palace stretched endlessly beneath crystal domes that caught starlight from a dozen conquered suns. Emperor Valen sat upon his throne of carved meteor stone, watching holographic reports flow across the air like glowing butterflies. Each report brought news of another world claimed, another species bent to his will, another star system added to his empire's endless reach. 3,000 years had passed since the first Valyrian ship left their homeworld. Now their empire covered half the galaxy, and nothing could stand against their might. The Emperor's fingers drummed against his throne as Admiral Stone approached with the daily conquest reports. Stone's boots clicked against the polished floor as he bowed low before speaking. "My lord, the human settlements on the rim worlds have fallen. Their ships were destroyed without significant loss to our forces." Valen barely looked up from his displays. Humans were nothing special, just another young species with crude metal, ships, and simple weapons. They had fought bravely enough, but bravery meant little against Valyrian energy shields and plasma cannons. Within a few more months, every human world would fly the Empire's golden banner. "How many ships did they lose?" Valen asked, more from habit than interest. "All of them, my lord. 700 vessels destroyed, 18 colonies surrendered. The species shows no sign of hidden reserves or advanced technology." The Emperor nodded. It was always the same story. Young civilizations would resist for a while, throwing their primitive ships against Valyrian battle fleets like insects against a wall of steel. Eventually they would see the futility and surrender, or they would be wiped out entirely. Either outcome served the Empire's needs. Censor officer Maya's voice suddenly cut through the throne room's calm atmosphere like a blade through silk. "My lord, I'm detecting something unusual on the outer rim sensors." Valen's eyes narrowed as he turned toward her station. In 3 millennia of expansion, the Valyrian military had encountered every type of ship, weapon, and defensive system the galaxy had to offer. Nothing surprised them anymore. "Define unusual," he commanded. Maya's fingers danced across her control panel, her face growing pale as she read the data. "A ship just appeared in the Kepler system, my lord. Not from hyperspace, not from behind a planet or asteroid. It simply materialized in empty space." Admiral Stone stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Cloaking device?" "No, sir. Our sensors show nothing, then suddenly register a massive vessel. 2 kilometers long, unknown design, power readings beyond our measurement. Capabilities." The Emperor rose from his throne, his 7-foot frame casting long shadows across the crystal floor. In all his years of rule, nothing had challenged the absolute certainty of Valyrian supremacy. Their technology was perfect, their military doctrine flawless, their expansion inevitable. "Show me the recordings," he ordered. The main display activated, revealing the edge of the Kepler system where Valyrian cleanup crews were processing the last human resistance cells. Empty space stretched between distant stars, broken only by the orderly formation of Imperial ships going about their business. Everything changed. A vessel appeared in the void, not emerging from any known form of travel, but simply existing where moments before there had been nothing. The ship defied every principle of Valyrian engineering with its smooth, flowing curves that seemed almost alive. Strange wing-like projections extended from its hull, and energy readings spiked far beyond anything their instruments could properly measure for exactly 10 seconds. The mysterious ship hung motionless in the darkness of space, then it vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. "Track its movement," Valen commanded, his voice carrying an edge that made every officer in the throne room stand straighter. "We cannot track it, my lord," Maya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is no energy trail, no gravitational disturbance, no hyperspace signature. According to our instruments, it was never there at all." But even as she spoke, the ship materialized again, this time closer to the Valyrian fleet. Close enough that their sensors could examine its hull in detail, revealing construction techniques that seemed to blend technology with organic growth. The vessel's surface rippled like water, adapting and changing even as they watched. Admiral Stone studied the tactical display with growing unease. Those are not weapon ports along its flanks. He was correct. The projections extending from the ship's hull were clearly scanning equipment of some kind, delicate instruments designed for observation rather than destruction. Yet something about the vessel's presence made every warrior in the throne room feel like prey animals suddenly aware of a hunting predator nearby. "Open communications," the Emperor ordered. "I will speak with whoever commands that ship." Communications Officer Beck worked frantically at his station, sending signals across every known frequency and communication protocol. "No response on any channel, my lord. They are not acknowledging our transmissions in any way." The strange ship continued its silent observation, its scanning arrays slowly rotating to examine the Valyrian fleet from every possible angle. For long minutes it studied them with an attention to detail that felt deeply unsettling. Then, without warning or explanation, it disappeared once more. This time, it did not return. Emperor Valen stood in the silence that followed, his mind racing through possibilities that all led to the same disturbing conclusion. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had possessed technology capable of appearing and vanishing at will. No civilization had built ships that could ignore the fundamental laws of physics. No enemy had ever studied Valyrian forces with such casual confidence. "Double our patrols in all outer systems," he commanded. "I want every sensor array operating at maximum sensitivity. Whatever that ship was, wherever it came from, I want it found." As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Valen remained standing before the main display, staring at the empty space where the impossible ship had been. For the first time in his long reign, the Emperor of the galaxy's greatest empire felt a cold touch of uncertainty creeping into his thoughts. The Valyrian Empire had built its power on the certainty that they possessed the most advanced technology in the galaxy. They had conquered countless worlds because no enemy could match their ships, their weapons, or their tactical superiority. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, something had just demonstrated capabilities that made Valyrian technology look primitive by comparison. And whatever intelligence controlled that mysterious vessel had examined their forces with the detached interest of a scientist studying insects. The empire that had never known defeat had just received its first glimpse of something that might be beyond their power to conquer. The golden age of Valyrian supremacy had lasted 3 millennia. It would not see another day. The war room aboard the Valyrian dreadnought Eternal Glory buzzed with nervous energy as officers bent over holographic displays showing fleet positions across a dozen star systems. Admiral Stone had commanded this vessel for 15 years, leading campaigns that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Now he found himself hunting an enemy that defied every tactical principle he had ever learned. "Report status," Stone commanded as he entered the briefing chamber. Captain Mills, his intelligence officer, gestured toward the central display where red markers indicated recent sightings. 23 confirmed appearances across 8 different systems, sir. Always the same pattern. The ship materializes, scans our forces for several seconds, then vanishes without trace. Stone studied the scattered markers, searching for patterns that might reveal the enemy's intentions. "Any correlation between the locations?" "All our systems where we recently defeated human resistance, sir." "The ship appears to be specifically interested in our post-conquest operations." The Admiral's jaw tightened. Whatever intelligence controlled the mysterious vessel was clearly studying Valyrian military procedures with uncomfortable thoroughness. "Have we learned anything useful about the ship itself?" Mills activated a detailed scan from their closest encounter. "Length approximately 2 kilometers. Mass readings fluctuate between solid matter and pure energy. Hull composition unknown, but our analysis suggests it may be partially organic. Weapon systems? None visible during scanning mode, but sir. Dull quotes. Mills hesitated before continuing. Energy output readings suggest power levels that dwarf our own dreadnoughts. If hostile, we would not survive direct confrontation." Stone had built his career on understanding enemy capabilities and exploiting their weaknesses. But this opponent revealed nothing while learning everything about Valyrian forces. It was like fighting a ghost that could study them at will while remaining completely invulnerable. New intelligence from captured human prisoners, reported Commander Davis from the interrogation section. None of them recognize the ship design or have any knowledge of such technology. Whatever it is, it does not belong to current human civilization. Then, who built it? Before anyone could speculate, the ship's proximity alarms began wailing. Red lights flashed throughout the war room as tactical displays showed an energy signature appearing directly ahead of their position. "Contact bearing 000, shouted the sensor operator. "The unknown vessel is here." But this encounter felt different from all previous sightings. Instead of maintaining distance while conducting scans, the mysterious ship materialized barely 1,000 meters from the Eternal Glory's bow. At this range, every detail of its alien construction became clearly visible through the main viewports. The hull was not merely organic in appearance but actually seemed to be alive, with surfaces that shifted and flowed like liquid metal responding to unseen currents. Panels that had been sealed during earlier observations now opened to reveal structures that could only be weapon systems, though their design followed no principles found in Valyrian military databases. "Power readings are climbing beyond our instrument's maximum range," Davis reported, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Whatever they are charging, we cannot measure its full potential." Stone opened his mouth to order an attack, knowing that their only chance lay in striking first before the alien weapons could fire. But the words died in his throat as something impossible happened. A voice spoke directly inside his mind, bypassing all external communication systems and appearing in his thoughts as clearly as if someone stood beside him whispering in his ear. Every person in the war room heard the same message simultaneously, their faces reflecting the same mixture of shock and terror. "We are the deep guard of humanity. You have invaded human space and threatened human lives. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." The ship vanished before anyone could respond, leaving behind only the lingering echo of that mental communication and the slowly dawning realization that they had just been challenged by something far beyond their understanding. Stone stared at the empty space where the vessel had been, his mind struggling to process what had just occurred. Direct mental communication was theoretically possible but required technology centuries ahead of current Valyrian science. More disturbing was the message itself. This ship claimed to represent humanity, but humanity was a primitive species barely capable of interplanetary travel. "Sir," Mill said quietly, "if they can project thoughts directly into our minds, what else might they be capable of?" It was a question none of them wanted to consider. Mental intrusion suggested capabilities that could potentially override their ship's computer systems, influence crew behavior, or even seize control of their weapons. Fighting an enemy with such abilities would be like battling an opponent who could see through their eyes and think with their thoughts. "Establish contact with all fleet units," Stone ordered. "I want confirmation that other ships receive the same message." Within minutes, reports flooded in from across the star system. Every Valyrian vessel, from massive dreadnoughts to small patrol craft, had experienced identical mental communication. The mysterious ship had somehow reached the minds of thousands of officers simultaneously without triggering any defensive countermeasures. "Orders from High Command," announced the communications officer. "We are to maintain current positions and await further instructions. All offensive operations against human targets are suspended pending strategic review." Stone understood the reasoning behind those orders. Until they understood what they were facing, any aggressive action might provoke a response they could not survive. But the defensive posture felt alien to Valyrian military doctrine, which had always emphasized overwhelming force and rapid conquest. "Sir," Davis said, studying incoming intelligence reports, "there may be a pattern to these appearances. Each sighting has occurred near sites where human resistance was strongest, almost as if the ship is specifically interested in our most difficult victories." The Admiral considered this information while watching tactical displays that showed the positions of their scattered fleet. If the enemy was studying their tactics and capabilities, then every moment of delay gave them additional advantages. But rushing into battle against an unknown opponent with superior technology would be suicide. "What do we know about human military history?" Stone asked. "Any records of advanced technology or unusual capabilities?" Mills consulted his database. "Standard development pattern for a young species. First spaceflight 3 centuries ago? Limited interstellar expansion, primitive weapons and defensive systems. Nothing in their history suggests they ever possessed technology approaching what we have observed. Then where did this ship come from?" It was a question that would haunt Stone through the long hours that followed as his fleet maintained its cautious positions while the mysterious vessel continued its pattern of appearances throughout human space. Each sighting revealed new capabilities, new impossibilities that challenged everything the Valyrian Empire thought it knew about the galaxy. The hunt had begun, but Stone was beginning to realize that his forces might not be the hunters, they might be the prey. Dr. Lisa Norton knelt in the red dust of Kepler 442b, carefully brushing ancient sediment away from what appeared to be a section of metallic wall, buried deep beneath layers of geological time. The excavation site stretched across several acres of barren landscape, revealing the remnants of structures that predated known human civilization by thousands of years. Her archaeological team had been working this dig for 3 years when the Valyrian invasion began. Now, trapped on the planet's surface while alien warships controlled the space above, they had nothing to do but continue their research and hope that someone would eventually come to evacuate them. Lisa never imagined that their discovery would change the course of the war itself. Professor Norton called her research assistant Mark from across the excavation pit. "You need to see what we found in Section 7. Lisa made her way carefully down the terrace slopes of the dig site, noting how the architectural style seemed to shift between different levels. The deeper sections showed construction techniques that appeared far more advanced than anything found in the upper layers. As if the builders had possessed increasingly sophisticated technology, the further back in time the excavation revealed. Mark stood beside a freshly uncovered chamber that glowed with soft blue light emanating from crystalline panels embedded in the walls. Unlike the stone and metal artifacts found elsewhere in the ruins, these surfaces hummed with barely contained energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "How is it still active after all this time?" Lisa whispered, pulling out her scanning equipment to record energy readings that spiked far beyond normal parameters. The crystal panels responded to her approach by flaring brighter, and symbols began appearing within their translucent depths. Not primitive pictographs like those found in the upper levels, but complex mathematical equations and technical diagrams that made Lisa's trained eye widen with recognition. "These are engineering schematics," she breathed. "Mark, this isn't just archaeological remains. This is some kind of technical archive." She activated her portable computer and began photographing the symbols while running linguistic analysis programs on the accompanying text. The writing was definitely human in origin, but evolved far beyond any known Earth languages, as if it had developed naturally over tens of thousands of years. "Can you translate any of it?" Mark asked, watching as more panels activated throughout the chamber, filling the air with holographic displays that showed star charts and technical specifications. Lisa worked frantically as her computer processed the ancient language patterns. "It's coming together slowly. The base structure is derived from old Earth languages, but with grammatical evolution that suggests—" She paused, staring at the translation appearing on her screen. "Mark, according to this timestamp, these records are 50,000 years old. That's impossible. Humans only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago." But even as Mark spoke, the translation programs were revealing text that described an advanced human civilization spanning hundreds of star systems. Technical manuals for ships that could manipulate space and time, weapons that could reshape matter at the molecular level, and most importantly, references to something called the Deep Guard Protocol. "Listen to this," Lisa said, reading from her translated notes. When the First Galactic Empire rose to threaten all independent species, humanity fought a war that lasted 3 centuries. Despite our advanced technology, we were ultimately forced to retreat rather than face complete extinction. More panels activated as she spoke, showing holographic recordings of massive space battles between sleek human vessels and the angular ships of some ancient enemy. The human ships moved with impossible grace, appearing and disappearing at will while striking with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. "But look at this section," Lisa continued, her voice growing excited. "Before the final evacuation, our ancestors initiated something called Project Deep Guard. They selected their most advanced ships and crews, equipped them with experimental technology, and sent them into what they call temporal fold space." Mark frowned as he studied the holographic displays. "What's temporal fold space?" "According to these records, it's a dimension outside normal time where objects can exist indefinitely without aging or decay. The Deep Guard fleet was supposed to wait there until humanity faced extinction again, then return to help their descendants." As if responding to their conversation, the chamber's central display activated to show a detailed schematic of a ship that made both archaeologists gasp in recognition. The vessel's organic curves, wing-like sensor arrays, and impossible energy systems matched perfectly with intelligence reports they had intercepted about the mysterious ship appearing throughout Valyrian space. "The Deep Guard is real," Lisa whispered, "and they're back." Above them, the sound of Valyrian transport ships filled the atmosphere as occupation forces prepared to relocate all human civilians to processing centers. But Lisa barely noticed the approaching soldiers as she gathered crystal storage devices and portable data cores containing 50 millennia of hidden human history. "Mark, help me download everything we can carry. If the Deep Guard is monitoring human communications, they need to know that someone has discovered the truth about their mission." Working quickly, they copied technical specifications, historical records, and most crucially, authentication codes that had been waiting 500 centuries to be used. Lisa activated her emergency transmitter and began broadcasting their discoveries on all human frequencies, hoping that ancient sensors would detect the transmission and recognize signals that predated the current galactic order. Valyrian soldiers surrounded their camp. Lisa smiled despite their desperate situation. The empire that had conquered half the galaxy was about to learn what humanity could accomplish given 50,000 years to prepare for this exact moment. The message went out across human space, carrying with it proof that humanity's true heritage stretched back far beyond recorded history. Technical data flowed through communication networks, showing ship designs that treated physics as a set of suggestions rather than absolute laws. Authentication protocols activated systems that had been dormant since before the current galactic civilization began. In the depths of temporal fold space, sensors that had waited longer than most species had existed finally detected the signals they were programmed to recognize. Ancient computers began initiating return sequences, while ships that had spent millennia in a realm outside time started their journey back to a universe that had aged without them. The Deep Guard had received confirmation that their descendants needed them. The wait was over, and the most advanced human fleet in history was coming home to a galaxy that had forgotten what humanity was truly capable of achieving. Lisa and her team were taken into custody by Valyrian forces, but their work was complete. They had rediscovered humanity's hidden legacy and awakened guardians, who had been waiting since before the first Valyrian had ever looked up at the stars. The archaeological dig that began as an academic curiosity had become the key to humanity's salvation. The Deep Guard was returning, and they were bringing 50,000 years of advanced technology with them. The emergency session of the Valyrian High Council convened in the deepest chambers of Supremacy Station, surrounded by walls of reinforced crystal that had witnessed 3 millennia of imperial expansion. Today, those same walls would bear witness to the Empire's first moment of genuine fear as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Emperor Valen sat at the head of the obsidian table while his military commanders displayed holographic battle reports that painted an increasingly desperate Picture? In the space of 18 hours, the Valyrian Empire had lost more ships and personnel than in the previous 3 centuries combined. Explain to me how this is possible, Valen demanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority that had never before been challenged. Admiral Stone's image flickered from the bridge of his flagship, sparks flying from damaged consoles behind him as medical teams rushed between wounded crew members. My lord, the human fleet operates beyond our understanding of physics. They appear without warning, strike with precision we cannot match, then vanish before we can mount effective counterattacks. General Brooks, commander of the Imperial Ground Forces, stepped forward with his own disturbing reports. Our forces on occupied human worlds describe similar encounters. The enemy doesn't rely on orbital bombardment like conventional military doctrine would suggest. Instead, they send small craft that somehow penetrate our defensive shields and deploy troops, with capabilities that seem impossible. The main display activated to show footage from various battle sites across human space. Valyrian officers watched in stunned silence as human soldiers moved with fluid grace that suggested they could predict enemy actions before they occurred. Their weapons fired energy beams that curved around obstacles to strike multiple targets simultaneously, while their armor adapted to incoming fire in real time. They know our tactics better than we do ourselves, Stone continued, his face haggard from days of continuous retreat. Every formation we deploy, every defensive strategy we implement, every weapon system we bring to bear, they counter it perfectly. It's as if they have complete intelligence on our entire military structure. Emperor Valen studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The systematic precision of humanity's counterattack suggested knowledge that went far beyond simple battlefield intelligence. These forces understood Valyrian technology, doctrine, and psychology with an intimacy that should have been impossible for any external enemy to achieve. They're not fighting like a primitive species, he realized aloud. They're fighting like they've been studying us for centuries. Before anyone could respond, Communications Officer Beck's voice cut through the council chamber with news that made every person present freeze in their seats. My lord, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's coming from Earth itself. The main display shifted to show a figure that immediately commanded attention through sheer presence alone. The human appeared to be in his middle years, wearing a uniform that bore no resemblance to any known human military organization. Behind him stretched what could only be the bridge of one of the mysterious ship surfaces that flowed like liquid mercury, control interfaces that responded to thought rather than physical contact, and displays showing tactical information that hurt to look at directly. I am Admiral Ross of the Terran Deep Space Fleet, the human said, his voice carrying an authority that made seasoned Valyrian officers instinctively step backward. 3 days ago, your forces were ordered to withdraw from human space. You have not complied with this directive. Valen rose from his seat, drawing upon 3,000 years of imperial dignity. I am Emperor Valen of the Valyrian Empire. You will explain how an inferior species dares to issue ultimatums to... Inferior? Ross interrupted, and something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. Emperor, your species achieved interstellar capability approximately 7,000 years ago. Humanity has been traveling between stars for more than 50,000 years. We were ancient when your ancestors first discovered fire. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. Impossible, General Brooks whispered. Ross seemed to hear him despite the transmission being one way. Your archaeologists never found evidence of our first civilization because we were thorough in our departure. When the previous galactic empire proved that younger species would inevitably choose domination over cooperation, we made a strategic decision to withdraw from normal space-time and wait. Wait for what? Valen demanded, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would bring no comfort. For our children to need us, Ross replied, his expression becoming gentler. The humans you have been conquering are our descendants, Emperor. They forgot their true heritage over the millennia, started fresh, developed naturally without our interference. We allowed this because we hoped they might find a better path than their ancestors chose. On the tactical displays surrounding the council chamber, more human ships continued materializing throughout Valyrian space. Not attacking, not destroying, simply taking position around every Imperial fleet and installation with the casual confidence of forces that knew they could not be challenged. But when you threatened them with extinction, Ross continued, family obligations became paramount. We have returned to ensure our descendants' survival and to offer you the same choice we gave the last empire that made this mistake. The Emperor's hands clenched into fists as he realized the implications of what he was hearing. The Zephyrian Empire. The historical records claim they vanished overnight, abandoning half the galaxy without explanation. They chose wisdom over pride, Ross said simply. They recognized that fighting us would result in their complete destruction, so they withdrew to their core systems and rebuilt their civilization along more peaceful lines. Their descendants still thrive in the Outer Rim, I believe. Valen felt the weight of 50 centuries of human technological development pressing down on him like a physical force. The Valyrian Empire had built its power on the assumption that they possessed the most advanced technology in the galaxy. But these humans had been perfecting their science and military capabilities since before Valyrian civilization even existed. You have the same choice your predecessors faced, Ross continued. Withdraw to your pre-expansion borders, release all conquered peoples, and learn to coexist peacefully with your neighbors. Or continue this conflict and discover why the previous Galactic Empire chose retreat rather than face us in open warfare. The transmission ended, leaving Emperor Valen staring at empty space while his advisors struggled to process what they had just learned. Around the council table, 3 millennia of imperial certainty crumbled as the reality of their situation became clear. The Valyrian Empire, masters of half the galaxy, had just been given an ultimatum by the older siblings of their intended victims, and those siblings had spent 50,000 years preparing for exactly this conversation while waiting patiently for their descendants to need protection. General Brooks was the first to break the silence. My lord, if their claims are accurate, we face an enemy with technological superiority that renders our forces obsolete. Continuing this conflict would be suicide. Admiral Stone's image nodded grimly from the display. Our losses in the past. They confirm this assessment. They're not even using their full capabilities against us. This has been a demonstration of power, nothing more. Emperor Valen stood motionless for long minutes, weighing the pride of 3,000 years against the survival of his people. The choice, when viewed objectively, was obvious. But no ruler in galactic history had ever been forced to make such a decision from a position of absolute helplessness. Draft the withdrawal orders, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. All forces are to retreat to our original borders. Release all prisoners and cease offensive operations immediately. The Valyrian Empire's age of expansion was over, ended not by defeat in battle, but by the revelation that they had been challenging forces beyond their comprehension. The mysterious ship that had blinked in and out of existence days earlier had indeed doomed the Empire from that first moment, not through weapons or warfare, but by announcing the return of humanity's true guardians. In the depths of space, ancient ships continued their journey home to a galaxy that would never be the same. The observation lounge of the Deep Guard vessel, Unity, offered a panoramic view of the construction taking place around Earth's orbital space, where massive ships from a dozen different species worked together to build humanity's first major space station in over 50 millennia. Dr. Lisa Norton stood at the transparent aluminum windows, still amazed by the transformation that had occurred in the 8 months since the Valyrian withdrawal. The transition had not been smooth for anyone involved. Learning that humanity's true history stretched back hundreds of centuries had shattered most people's fundamental beliefs about their place in the universe. But gradually, as the Deep Guard shared their archives and advanced technology, a new understanding began to emerge among both the returning Guardians and their rediscovered descendants. The integration process continues to present challenges, admitted Admiral Ross as he joined Lisa at the observation port. His uniform now bore insignia representing both the ancient Deep Guard and the modern human governments that were slowly learning to work together. I can imagine, Lisa replied. 8 months ago, I was an archaeologist studying ruins on a backwater colony. Now, I'm the director of the Historical Recovery Project, with access to 50,000 years of human civilization that we forgot ever existed, Ross nodded thoughtfully. My crew spent 5 centuries in temporal fold space, watching the universe age while we remained unchanged. Returning to find that our descendants had developed their own cultures, their own governments, their own ways of thinking about the galaxy, it required significant adjustment for everyone. Through the viewport, they could see vessels that would have been impossible to imagine just months earlier. Sleek Valyrian ships worked alongside crude but sturdy human freighters, while the organic curves of Deep Guard technology contrasted with the angular efficiency of vessels from species that had been liberated when the Empire collapsed. Any developments from the deep space surveys? Lisa asked, referring to the exploration missions that had been launched to investigate other regions of the galaxy. Remarkable discoveries, Ross replied with evident satisfaction. It appears that humanity was not the only species to develop contingency plans during the First Galactic Age. We've made contact with 4 other Deep Guard equivalents ancient fleets from civilizations that chose to wait and watch rather than submit to imperial rule. Lisa turned from the viewport to face him directly. Admiral, there's something I've been wondering about since we first met. Why didn't the Deep Guard return sooner? Humanity has faced extinction-level threats before throughout history. Wars, plagues, natural disasters that could have wiped us out completely. Ross was quiet for several minutes, his gaze fixed on the construction work outside. Because those previous crises made humanity stronger, Dr. Norton. Each challenge they overcame taught them valuable lessons, pushed them to develop new technologies, forced them to expand their understanding of the universe. Even when they faced serious setbacks, they were always moving forward, always growing. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. But the Valyrian Empire represented something fundamentally different. Total subjugation with no possibility of growth or development. Our descendants would have become a slave species, gradually, losing everything that made them human until they were just another conquered people serving imperial interests. And now? Now they're remembering their heritage while choosing their own future. Look there. Ross pointed to a section of the growing space station where human engineers worked, alongside former Valyrian citizens who had chosen to join the new Galactic Alliance rather than return to their diminished empire. They're not repeating the mistakes that led to our first civilization's downfall. Instead of ruling through superior technology, they're building relationships based on mutual respect and shared goals. Lisa smiled as she watched the cooperative construction efforts. The research teams in my department are completely overwhelmed. 50,000 years of archaeological sites to explore, technologies to understand, historical records to catalog and study. It will take centuries just to process everything we've rediscovered. Fortunately, we're not going anywhere, Ross replied. The Deep Guard's original mission is complete, but our role as humanity's extended family is just beginning. We have much to learn from each other. An alert chimed from Ross's personal communicator, and the voice of his communications officer filled the lounge. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Andromeda contact team. Lisa and Ross exchanged meaningful glances. 2 months earlier, deep space sensors had detected artificial signals originating from the Andromeda galaxy, indicating the presence of another major civilization. The decision to initiate contact had been unanimous among the Alliance species, though everyone understood that the implications could reshape their understanding of the universe once again. Route it through to this location, Ross instructed, the holographic display activated to show Commander Wells, a joint Deep Guard and modern human officer who had been selected to lead the first intergalactic contact mission. Behind her, the Starfield wheeled slowly as her ship traveled between galaxies at speeds that made light seem sluggish. Admiral, we've successfully established communication with what they call the Andromedan Collective. Wells reported, her voice carrying barely contained excitement. They're remarkably similar to what we're building here, multiple species working together, sharing resources and knowledge, governing through consensus rather than domination. Lisa felt a chill of possibility run down her spine. How many species are we talking about? Thousands, Wells replied. And they've been in contact with similar collectives throughout the local galactic cluster. It seems the universe is filled with civilizations that eventually learn to choose cooperation over conquest. They formally invited the Milky Way Alliance to join something they call the Intergalactic Cooperative. Ross laughed with pure joy, a sound that echoed through the observation lounge and drew smiles from passing crew members. Commander, please extend our gratitude for the invitation and inform them that we'll need time to discuss this opportunity among our member species. But you may also tell them that we're very interested in learning what becomes possible when civilizations choose partnership over domination. As the transmission ended, Lisa returned to watching the construction work outside, her mind struggling to process the implications of what they had just learned. Humanity had begun as a small species on an unremarkable planet nearly destroyed. Itself, with its first attempt at galactic civilization, spent 50,000 years in exile, and now stood on the verge of joining an intergalactic community that spanned multiple galaxies. The mysterious ship that appeared in Valyrian space 8 months ago really did doom their empire, she mused aloud. Not through violence or warfare, but by showing the galaxy what becomes possible when ancient wisdom guides young ambition. Ross nodded, his expression thoughtful. The Valyrians built their empire on the belief that might makes right, that superior technology gives them the authority to dominate others. They never imagined that there might be forces in the galaxy old enough and wise enough to prove them wrong. Lisa watched as a group of young human engineers collaborated with their Valyrian counterparts to solve a complex structural problem. The former enemies worked together with an ease that would have seemed impossible just months ago, sharing knowledge and techniques that benefited everyone involved. What happens next? She asked. We've rediscovered our past, made peace with our former enemies, and now we're being invited to join an intergalactic community. It feels almost too good to be true. Perhaps that's because we've grown accustomed to thinking small, Ross replied. For centuries, humanity believed we were alone in a hostile universe, struggling to survive against forces beyond our control. But the truth is that the galaxy is full of species who want the same things we do: peace, prosperity, the chance to grow and learn and explore. A new alert sounded, and this time the message came from Earth itself. The holographic display showed President Martinez, the recently elected leader of the United Human Colonies, speaking from the rebuilt United Nations headquarters in Geneva. Admiral Ross, Dr. Norton, I hope you can join us for tomorrow's ceremony. The Galactic Alliance Charter is ready for signing, and we'd like both the Deep Guard and the Historical Recovery Project to be represented. Lisa felt a surge of pride as she realized what this moment represented. The Charter would formally establish the new galactic government based on principles of cooperation and mutual respect rather than conquest and domination. Every species in the Alliance would have an equal voice in decisions that affected their shared future. We'll be honored to attend, Ross replied. This charter represents everything we hoped our descendants would achieve when we first entered temporal fold space 50,000 years ago. As the transmission ended, Lisa returned to the viewport one final time. The space station was nearly complete now, its modular sections fitted together, with precision that spoke to the combined expertise of multiple species working toward a common goal. Ships from across the galaxy came and went, carrying diplomats, scientists, and ordinary citizens who were building the foundations of a new kind of civilization. Admiral, she said quietly, do you think our ancestors would be proud of what we've accomplished? Ross joined her at the window, his reflection visible in the transparent aluminum as he smiled. I think they'd be amazed by how far their children have come. When we left 50,000 years ago, humanity was bitter and angry about their defeat. They built the Deep Guard out of a desire for revenge against the forces that had driven them from their homes. He paused, watching as a group of children from different species played together in one of the station's recreational areas, their laughter echoing through the corridors despite the barriers of language and biology. But look what their descendants became instead. You didn't seek revenge against the Valyrians when you had the power to take it. You offered them partnership and forgiveness. You turned enemies into allies and built something better than what came before. Lisa nodded, understanding finally why the Deep Guard had waited so long to return. Their descendants needed to find their own way, make their own mistakes, and ultimately choose their own path forward. The ancient guardians could provide knowledge and protection, but wisdom could only come from experience. The mysterious ship that blinked in and out of Valyrian space really was the beginning of the end for their empire, she said. But it was also the beginning of something much better for everyone else. Through the viewport, the first rays of Earth's sun illuminated the completed space station as it began its initial rotation. The structure would serve as the capital of the new Galactic Alliance, a symbol of what became possible when different species chose to work together instead of fighting against each other. Somewhere in the depths of space, other civilizations watched and waited, ready to welcome the Milky Way Alliance into an intergalactic community that stretched beyond imagination. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally ready to explore it not as conquerors but as partners in the greatest adventure of all. The Age of Empires was ending, and the Age of Cooperation had begun.